Assalamu alaikum students. This lecture is for the class 7th, subject of political science. We were discussing about the governments of states, like we discussed about governor, his or her powers, chief minister, his powers, the council of ministers, who appoint the council of ministers. Actually, these council of ministers are not at the same rank. Council of ministers are the representatives of the different states. These council of ministers are the team of, at the central level, the prime minister; at the state level, the chief minister. We were discussing about the states, so we will discuss about at the state level. So council of ministers are the team of chief minister. They are appointed by the governor on the aid and advice of the chief minister of the concerned state. These council of ministers are of different types: cabinet ministers, ministers of the state, and deputy ministers. So the council of ministers are not all at the same rank. They are different at different levels. Now let's see who are these cabinet ministers, ministers of the state, and deputy ministers. Now these cabinet ministers, these are the top tier minister holding important individual portfolios. That means cabinet minister, we can say that a chief minister has council of ministers, but in the council of ministers there is a place for the cabinet ministers. These cabinet ministers are the top tier of ministry because they have their individual portfolios. Portfolios, as we discussed earlier, are nothing but the things or the work which is done by a minister or which is given to a minister, like defense minister, education minister, finance minister. These are the portfolios: finance minister, defense, education, human development. These are the portfolios given to the individuals. So the cabinet ministers are those ministers which are at the top tier rank of ministry. They have their own individual portfolios. A cabinet minister has a right to be present and participate in every meeting of the cabinet. That means when the chief minister calls for a meeting, a cabinet meeting, then every cabinet minister has to be present there and has to participate in every meeting of the cabinet. He or she should not say that I am ill, I can't came, or whatever reasons. No, he or she has to be present in the cabinet minister meeting. For proclamation of any emergency under Article 352, the advice must come from the prime minister and other ministers of the cabinet rank. That means if we look at the central level, there the prime minister called the advice of these cabinet ministers under the Article 352. If there is any state emergency under Article 352, the prime minister and the other ministers of the cabinet, the advice should come from the prime minister and other ministers of the cabinet rank. That means they both, at the central level, state level, the emergency is also imposed even, and there is any emergency at the state level or at the central level, then at the state level chief minister takes the advice of their cabinet minister, and at the central level prime minister takes the advice of their cabinet minister. So we can say, we will not go to the emergency and other things, but we can say cabinet ministers are those ministers who are holding the important individual portfolios and are at the top tier of ministry. Now comes the ministers of the state. They can be of two types: holding individual charge, not having individual charge. So the ministers of the state are of two types. One is holding individual charge and second is not having individual charge. First of all, we will see holding individual charge. What does that mean? He does not come under any cabinet minister. When matters relate to his department arise, he can attend cabinet meetings. So we can say that holding individual charge means if a minister, if he or she doesn't come under the cabinet ministry. So we can say that a minister doesn't came under the cabinet ministry, but if a minister, his department arises relate to that cabinet meeting, he or she has to attend the cabinet meeting. That means when the matters related to his department arises in the cabinet meetings, he or she has to be present there. Not having individual charge. He works under a cabinet minister and does the duty given to him by the cabinet minister. That means those ministers who are under the cabinet ministers, and also they have to perform the duty which is given to them by a cabinet minister. That means ministers of the state, these are those who came under the cabinet ministry. They work under the cabinet ministers and they perform their duty which is given to them by the cabinet ministers. These are the two types of ministers of the state. One, holding individual charge. Second, not having individual charge. Holding individual charge means that the minister doesn't came under the cabinet minister, but when the matters related to that department arises, he or she has to attend the cabinet meeting. And second thing is that a cabinet minister, the minister not having individual charge, has to work under the cabinet minister and does the duty given to him by a cabinet minister. That means a cabinet minister gives a duty to a minister of the state. He or she has to perform by the orders of that cabinet minister. Third type are the deputy ministers. They work under the cabinet ministers or ministers of the state with independent charge. They perform the work given to them by the ministers above them. That means deputy ministers are those ministers which are under the cabinet ministers or the ministers of the state with independent charge. They have their own charges. They work according to the work which is given to them. They perform their work given by them by the ministers above. That means whether the cabinet minister, whether the minister of the state, these deputy ministers work under them. So all in all, we can say that council of ministers are those ministers which are the team of the council of minister, chief minister at the state level or at the central level, or the team of prime minister. Among them, council of ministers, when they are elected in an election, among them the their leader is chosen as chief minister. Then the chief minister along with the governor chooses his or her cabinet ministers. They are given their individual portfolios. There are three types of ministers: cabinet ministers, ministers of the state, and deputy ministers. Cabinet ministers are the ministers who having individual charge, and they are the team of the council of chief minister. Ministers of the state, they work under the cabinet ministers, and also if there is any matters related to them arises in the cabinet meeting, they have to attend that cabinet meeting, and also they work under the supervision of the cabinet ministers. Like the deputy ministers, they also work under the cabinet ministers and the ministers of the state and have their independent charges. This was about the council of ministers and the types of ministers in the state. Thank you.